The first inhabitants of the eastern Baltic region brought with them the Madlin hunters' culture and interrelationships that corresponded to this culture. It is believed that the small nuclear family was the main axis of the society of hunters and fishermen right up to the middle of the Neolithic. This type of family was amorphous and unstable. It was easily dissolved. Marital relationships between cousins were allowed in the nuclear family. A man could marry daughters of his mother's brothers or daughters of his father's sisters. The children born, when they grew older, became the concern of the close relatives rather than the family. This was determined by the poor economy of the nuclear family. Under conditions of hunting, fishing and foraging economy, the work of the spouses was not enough to maintain the family. It was usual for both men and women to work in cooperation with their relatives, and the product obtained used to be shared among the kinsfolk rather than between the spouses. The burial grounds discovered in Kretuonas 1b settlement reflect clearly the relationships between family members and relatives. People were buried in kin groups rather than in families there. A newcomer from another kin group was buried at some distance from others. Traces of the nuclear family are found in all Paleolithic camps of the European forest zone. These are small, about 6 to 10 meters in diameter accumulations of flint articles, the inventory of which is in essence the same. Knives, spearheads and wood processing tools belong to the male inventory, whereas scrapers, arrow straighteners and awls belong to the female inventory. Investigations into the camps give us some information about the family of the community of hunters and fishermen. It could have consisted of 5 to 7 persons, and several families formed a community with its own farming territory, the forest, fields, rivers and lakes. It is estimated that in the heyday of the assimilating economy, a community of 4 to 5 families consisting of 25 to 30 persons needed areas stretching about 10 kilometers in diameter. In the Middle Neolithic, about 4200 to 2900 BC, the economy of our lands took the path which English archaeologist Gordon Childe defined as the Neolithic Revolution. During the period of economic development, the nuclear family found itself under the umbrella of the extended family. Long quadrangle buildings that came into existence in the Middle Neolithic enable us to make this supposition. These buildings were divided by partitions into several rooms, with a fireplace inside each of them. The family who lived in such a dwelling consisted of several, most often 3 or 4, generations of married and single relatives. At the same time, groups of small quadrangle buildings appeared alongside the long buildings. All members of the family lived together, forming a small village. They managed the land and reared animals together. They farmed and shared products from common stocks. The family was headed by the chieftain, and the female part was headed by the chieftainess, usually the chieftain's wife. They distributed farm work and supervised its course, managed the stocks and tools, maintained discipline and moral rules, and led the family cult. The eldest son helped the head of the family, and the eldest daughter-in-law assisted his wife. However, according to ethnographers, the council, consisting of all adult men and women of the family, solved the affairs of the common property and marriage. The extended family is also referred to as the Patriarchal Family. It is believed that in our lands the male had taken the priority both in the family and in the community since the early Neolithic. Burials found in Kretuonas 1b settlement reflect that in part. It is only for men that a symbolic fireplace with ochre was installed. After death, men were believed to be guardians of their children. Underlying the male's role in animal husbandry, horses' teeth used to be placed near the man's head during burial. The model of the extended family is embodied in the equipment of Barrow Cemeteries of later epochs, in the Bronze and early Iron Ages. 3 Barrow Cemeteries, one next to another, discovered in Eglishki, most probably reflected the composition of the patriarchal family. 1 Barrow Cemetery to 1 family. Graves for the family chieftains were installed in structures made of stone in their central parts. Graves of the remaining family members were installed in other places of the mound. It is thought that such cemeteries were left by the communities which were related by close family relationships, and which retained elements of the team spirit and democracy. It is most likely that small monogamous families evolved from these extended families. In the middle of the Bronze Age, the extended families began to dissolve. The families which separated from them when looking for safer places left the non-established settlements. They settled down in the hills that were protected by nature and fortified by themselves, hill forts. Long buildings consisting of several rooms with fireplaces, or small buildings with a fireplace meant for a single family, were most often built in the hill forts of the first millennium BC. Researchers of hill forts believed that the small family lived in separate buildings, and one large patriarchal family ruled the economy of the entire hill fort. At the beginning of the first millennium AD, the Baltic world mastered extraction and production of iron from swamp ore. This was a stimulus for a small family to form. The small family became an independent economic unit. Iron tools and farming implements, as well as their economic effect, gave prominence to male work. Different sets of burial items reveal the division of labor between males and females. Male graves contain a large number of knives, axes, guns, sometimes scythes, and ploughing implements, whereas female graves abound in awls, small penknives, and spindles. It is obvious that the male became the dominant figure in animal husbandry, agriculture, and hunting. The home, the kitchen, the garden, and family life constituted the environment of the female's work. Patriarchal principles became established in everyday life and law. A girl had to obey the elder relatives unconditionally, and a married woman had to obey her new family. Divorce became the male's privilege, because if a woman wanted to return to her parents' home, her relatives had to repay the marriage ransom. Even after her husband's death, the widow could not be free. She had to marry her husband's brother, and in this way she remained in the family, and her property consisted of the dowry only. Younger men of the family were also dependent on the elder members of the family and on the head of the family in particular. They had no right to choose whom to marry, no right to separate and create an independent household. The younger obeyed unconditionally in fear of being deprived of inheritance, of being turned out of the house, being sold into servitude, or even being killed. Patriarchal ethics underlined their dependence. It was prohibited to sit or lie, to speak and laugh aloud in the presence of elders, to appear improperly dressed, or to be the first to start a conversation. The changed settlements testify to a small monogamous family. At the beginning of the new era, hill forts were abandoned. The villages, in which from 3 to 10 families lived, began to emerge at the foots of hill forts. All families started settling down in separate homesteads. The structure of the burial grounds provides a true reflection of the establishment of the small family. Several groups of burials were found in Daugavpils burial grounds of the 1st and 3rd centuries. Graves of especially wealthy chieftains of the family, a male and a female, are found in each of them. An entire family grave was found at the Lauksvidei burial ground, where 2 men, 2 women, and a child of 13 to 14 were buried. Mixed graves of a male and a male and a child, come into existence, which are a true witness of the small family. Hence it can be stated that the small family became the major cell of the Baltic society as far back as the 2nd and 3rd century AD.